Imagine an immigration policy shakeup that not only changes the way applications are processed, but also sends shockwaves through the political landscape. This is exactly what happened when U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services announced a sweeping waiver for COVID-19 vaccination documentation for those seeking lawful permanent resident status. Today, as of January 22nd, 2025, USCIS declared that applicants no longer need to present any documentation proving they received a COVID-19 vaccination on their Form I-693. That's right. The long-standing burden of showing COVID vaccination status has now been lifted. However, before you start celebrating too early, know that this isn't a blanket relaxation across the board. Applicants are still required to provide proof of vaccinations for other diseases, a detail that ensures public health is still taken very seriously. For years, the COVID-19 vaccination requirement had been a critical point of contention. It had divided opinions, raised debates about personal freedom versus public health, and impacted thousands of immigrant applicants. Originally established by the previous administration, this requirement meant that would-be permanent residents had to navigate not only the complexities of immigration processes, but also the intricacies of comprehensive health documentation. Now, with this new waiver, a significant roadblock seems to be removed, sparking both relief and controversy, depending on whom you ask. Underpinning this decision is a larger political narrative. It comes in the wake of a reversal by President Donald Trump, who had long been a polarizing figure on immigration policy. During his inaugural address and subsequent speeches, Trump relentlessly emphasized border security and the need for strict immigration controls. His approach has always been built on the premise that strong borders and tough stances on illegal immigration are not just ideals, but necessities for national security. His administration's policies ranged from deploying military personnel to the southern border to radically transforming how the country dealt with illegal immigrants. And now, this waiver marks another milestone in that journey. Let's dive into the details of what USCIS announced. In an official statement, USCIS declared effective June 22nd, 2025, USCIS is waiving any and all requirements that applicants for adjustment of status to that of a lawful permanent resident present documentation on their Form I-693 that they received the COVID-19 vaccination. In essence, this means that regardless of whether the applicant was vaccinated against COVID-19 or not, this particular piece of medical evidence will no longer hinder their application. What this does is level the playing field, in a sense, removing what had been viewed by some as a politicized health mandate from interfering with the immigration process. Now, this decision is not operating in isolation. It is intrinsically linked to a broader policy shift spearheaded by President Trump and echoed in his administration's extensive immigration reform strategies. For those who have followed Trump's policies, you might recall how he outlined his various immigration policies during his inaugural address. He painted a picture of a nation under siege from illegal immigration and promised measures such as mass deportations, heightened border security, and a dramatic reassessment of existing immigration laws. His vision was unapologetic and direct, a commitment to closing the borders to those who might threaten America's sovereignty. In one of his more memorable moments, President Trump proclaimed, "First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. All illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came." This statement not only captured the raw determination of his approach, but also set the stage for a climate where even minor policy adjustments, such as lifting the COVID-19 vaccine documentation requirement, are seen as meaningful shifts in the complex framework of immigration law. But there's more to the story. Under the Trump administration, the emphasis wasn't limited to vaccination mandates. Immigration policies were overhauled in many respects. One of the most contentious proposals was the reinstatement of the Remain in Mexico policy, which mandated that asylum seekers wait in Mexico while their claims were processed. This policy was designed to blunt the pipeline of asylum seekers at the border, effectively turning back large numbers of people before they could even set foot on U.S. soil. Alongside this, agencies like Immigration and Customs Enforcement were ordered to increase daily detentions to stem what was described as an influx of illegal immigrants, a move that stirred intense debate across the nation. The administration's aggressive stance also extended to its relationship with international criminal networks. Trump's rhetoric frequently referred to the southern border as being overrun by criminal gangs, cartels, and even known terrorists. In one notable declaration, he stated, "And by invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, I will direct our government to use the full and immense power of federal and state law enforcement to eliminate the presence of all foreign gangs and criminal networks." These words were not just political posturing. They represented a commitment to using every tool at the government's disposal to combat what was portrayed as a relentless threat to American security. This aggressive posture resonated with a segment of the public and lawmakers alike. Representatives such as Thomas Massey hailed the USCIS announcement as a forward-thinking move. Massey, who has been an outspoken critic of the COVID-19 vaccination mandates for immigrants, remarked, "I have a bill to end the COVID jab mandate for legal immigrants, but Trump just suspended the mandate. Hallelujah." His approval and enthusiastic support underscored the fact that for some political factions, easing this requirement was not merely an administrative update, but a symbolic victory in the larger battle over immigration policy. However, it's crucial to understand that this change, while significant, does not represent a free-for-all in terms of public health verifications. Applicants for adjustment of status still need to provide evidence that they received vaccinations for other diseases. This nuanced approach reflects an attempt to balance public health concerns with the desire to simplify the immigration process. It's an acknowledgement that while COVID-19 has reshaped the world in profound ways, its role in determining eligibility for lawful permanent residence is now being reconsidered. In addition to these changes, the Trump administration has not shied away from further controversial actions. One of the more drastic measures involved the elimination of the CBP-1 app, a tool that had previously allowed asylum seekers to schedule appointments. The cancellation of these appointments left many in limbo, further complicating an already intricate and often heart-wrenching process for those seeking refuge in the United States. Critics argued that these decisions demonstrated a fundamental shift in how the U.S. engaged with those seeking asylum, moving away from the idea of a welcoming democracy towards a nation focused on strict enforcement and deterrence. Then there is the matter of birthright citizenship. Trump's executive order, aimed at ending the practice of birthright citizenship, has sparked legal challenges and fierce debates. Historically, the 14th Amendment guaranteed citizenship to anyone born on American soil, regardless of the circumstances. Yet, under this new executive order, the Trump administration has reinterpreted the amendment in ways that could potentially alter the foundational fabric of American identity. In a recent statement, the White House declared, "America's sovereignty is under attack. Our southern border is overrun by cartels, criminal gangs, known terrorists, human traffickers, smugglers, unvetted military-age males from foreign adversaries, and illicit narcotics that harm Americans, including America." These words are not just rhetoric. They reflect a broader narrative where national security and cultural identity are being re-examined in the face of global and domestic challenges. Supporters of these policies argue that every measure, from waiving the COVID-19 vaccination documentation to strict border enforcement, fortifies American sovereignty. They view these actions as necessary responses to an ever-evolving threat landscape, where the traditional lines between national security, public health, and immigration policy blur in complex ways. For them, the waiver is not just a bureaucratic update. It is a strategic move designed to ensure that the immigration system focuses on the aspects that truly matter for national well-being and security. It's a way to remove what they see as outdated requirements so that resources and attention can be directed toward combating more pressing issues, such as criminal networks and threats to public safety. Conversely, critics of these moves warn of the long-term implications for both immigrants and American society as a whole. They argue that while lifting the COVID-19 vaccination requirement may simplify the process for some, it also opens the door to potential public health risks if other vaccination protocols are not enforced stringently. There is also concern that these policies, coupled with the aggressive rhetoric coming from the administration, could lead to a more polarized society where the rights of immigrants are undermined in the name of national security. For many, this shift represents a departure from the ideals of openness and compassion that have long been associated with the American dream. The broader geopolitical implications cannot be ignored. In a world where global migration patterns are constantly shifting due to economic challenges, conflicts, and environmental factors, the way a country handles immigration reflects its values and its place in the global community. The United States, often seen as a beacon for those in search of freedom and opportunity, now faces the challenge of reconciling its long-standing reputation as a melting pot with a policy framework that emphasizes security above all else. The decision to waive the COVID-19 vaccine documentation requirement is just one chapter in a larger story about how America is redefining itself on the global stage. And let's not forget the personal stories behind these policy decisions. Every applicant for lawful permanent residence represents hopes, dreams, and often the result of years of planning and sacrifice. For many immigrants, the process is fraught with uncertainty from the moment they decide to seek a new life in the United States. For them, the elimination of one of the many hurdles, such as proving a COVID-19 vaccination, can feel like a small but significant victory. It signals a shift in emphasis from bureaucratic rigidity to a more flexible, albeit still strict, immigration process. The waiver, while controversial, may in some cases offer a faster, less encumbered pathway to the American dream. Still, the story is far from straightforward. Immigration policy in the United States has always been a battleground of conflicting interests and ideologies. On one side, there are those who believe that stringent criteria are necessary to maintain national security and public health. On the other, there are those who argue that such requirements create unnecessary obstacles and can even undermine the very principles of inclusion and opportunity upon which the country was founded. The current waiver is emblematic of this ongoing debate. It reflects an attempt to adapt to the realities of a post-pandemic world while also recognizing that some of the measures introduced during the height of a global health crisis may no longer be as relevant. Looking ahead, the impact of this policy change will be closely monitored. Immigration attorneys, public health experts, and policymakers are all weighing in on what this could mean for the future of American immigration. Will it pave the way for further reforms that prioritize speed and efficiency over documentation and red tape, or will it be seen as a symbolic gesture that masks deeper issues within the system? Only time will tell. What is clear, however, is that this decision has set a precedent. By removing the COVID-19 vaccination documentation requirement, USCIS is signaling that certain measures, no matter how contentious, can be reevaluated in light of changing circumstances. In the words of John Baker, a seasoned political correspondent for Modern Newsstand LLC, every policy decision is part of a larger mosaic that defines American governance. When policies are revised, even those that seem purely procedural, the ripple effects are felt far beyond the immediate administrative impacts. They shape public discourse, influence political campaigns, and alter the lives of everyday people. The waiver is not just about reducing paperwork. It's about reshaping the narrative of what it means to be an immigrant in today's America. As we consider the layers of this story, it is important to remember that policies do not exist in a vacuum. The USCIS waiver is intertwined with Trump's comprehensive immigration strategy, which has aimed to secure borders, enforce laws, and reassert American sovereignty in a world that many believe is increasingly unpredictable. His aggressive stance on illegal immigration, combined with measures like designating international cartels as foreign terrorist organizations and bolstering law enforcement at the border, underscores a philosophy that seeks to protect American interests at almost any cost. Yet, within this framework lies a complex balancing act. On one hand, ensuring that immigrants meet certain health requirements undeniably serves public interests. On the other, overly burdensome requirements can delay or even derail the aspirations of those who have come to America seeking a better future. The decision to relax the COVID-19 vaccination documentation requirement recognizes this tension. It attempts to strike a balance by removing what many see as an unnecessary obstruction while retaining critical safeguards for other health concerns. There is also an undeniable symbolic dimension to this move, particularly given the context in which it was made. For years, the COVID-19 pandemic reshaped societal norms and forced governments to make difficult decisions. Immigrants, in particular, faced unique challenges during this time, from accessing healthcare to enduring travel restrictions, and ultimately, many had their hopes dashed by seemingly arbitrary requirements. By lifting this mandate, while concurrently reinforcing other aspects of its immigration protocols, USCIS is, in effect, acknowledging that while the world has changed since the height of the pandemic, the commitment to public health must remain steadfast. The administration's response to these changes has been a mix of enthusiasm and caution. Supporters, like Representative Thomas Massey, see the waiver as a long overdue adjustment that will streamline the process for legal immigrants. They argue that the market for talent and opportunity should not be hindered by what they consider outdated coronavirus-era regulations. Meanwhile, skeptics are keeping a close eye on how these modifications will play out in practice. Will easing this requirement lead to greater efficiency and economic revitalization, or will it create unforeseen challenges that complicate an already difficult process? Adding another layer to the debate is the stark contrast between this decision and the administration's standing policy approach on other issues at the border. Consider the elimination of the CBP One app, the tool that once allowed asylum seekers to schedule appointments. Its cancellation has led to confusion and delays, highlighting a broader trend of prioritizing enforcement and control over facilitation and support. This juxtaposition of easing one requirement while tightening control in other areas paints a picture of an administration striving to achieve a specific vision, one where the United States is both secure from external threats and uncompromising in its standards for those who wish to join its ranks. This vision, however, is not without controversy. Critics have repeatedly pointed out that such an approach risks alienating those who see the United States as a refuge for the oppressed, a land where hard work and determination can overcome even the most daunting obstacles. The waiver, in this sense, may be viewed as a mixed bag, a gesture toward modernizing an outdated procedure, coupled with a reminder of just how complex and often contradictory immigration policy can be. As we analyze this decision further, the political rhetoric surrounding these policies also deserves attention. In numerous speeches, President Trump made it abundantly clear that his priority is the protection of American sovereignty. As Commander-in-Chief, I have no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions, he declared in one of his addresses. Such statements resonate with a segment of the population that feels insecure in a rapidly changing world. For many, these words serve as a promise that America's government is actively working to address perceived vulnerabilities, even if the approaches it takes are not without their own controversies. At the same time, this approach has stirred significant debate about the role of government discretion in matters of public health and immigration. Balancing individual rights with collective security has always been a daunting task for policymakers, and the COVID-19 vaccination requirement was one such measure where the scales were heavily scrutinized. With the waiver in place, the dialogue has shifted from whether such requirements are necessary to how they are implemented and what other measures can be adjusted to better reflect current realities. Looking forward, it will be interesting to observe how these policies evolve. Will future administrations see this waiver as a temporary fix, or will it become a permanent precedent? Will further adjustments be made in response to public opinion, legal challenges, or shifts in the global health landscape? There is no doubt that today's decision will have far-reaching consequences, both for the process of acquiring lawful permanent resident status and for the broader narrative surrounding American immigration. In